Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the massive, kind of complicated, and let's be honest, often chaotic world of corporate data. And we're going to look at how a platform like Microsoft Purview tries to bring some order to it all.
So let's just start with a number that should make you sit up and pay attention. 80%. What if I told you that 80% of the entire cost of a legal dispute could come down to just one single activity? Yeah, you guessed it, document review.
And this isn't just some made-up number. The American Bar Association estimates that this costs businesses over $42 billion a year. That is a colossal expense, and it's all driven by this overwhelming sea of digital information that pretty much every modern company generates every single day.
I mean, to put that into perspective, we create about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data daily. And, with the explosion of hybrid work and tools like Microsoft Teams, the challenge isn't just the sheer volume anymore, it's the maddening complexity of trying to find that one critical email or that one chat message right when you need it most.
Okay, so how do you even begin to tackle this data monster? Well, you can't just jump in blindly. You need a framework. And really, the industry standard approach is built on three fundamental pillars of modern data governance. The best way to think about all this is to imagine your company's data is like a massive library, where the books are just thrown into giant piles on the floor. To make any of it useful, you've got to have a system, right? A way to categorize the books, protect the really valuable ones, and find a specific sentence when a researcher desperately needs it.
And that brings us to our first pillar, data classification. This is basically the library's card catalog. It's the foundational step of just knowing what kind of data you have. Is this public info? Is it for internal eyes only? Or is it highly sensitive financial data? You have to know what you've got before you can do anything with it. So Purview has this kind of tiered approach. You can have users manually apply labels, which is simple, but relies on people actually doing it. Then you can use automated pattern matching to instantly find universal things like credit card numbers. But the real game changer is the trainable classifier. This is where you essentially teach an AI what your company's unique sensitive documents look like, things like project proposals or legal contracts, stuff that no off-the-shelf tool could ever possibly recognize.
All right, so once you know what's in your library, you've got to protect it. And that's pillar 2, data loss prevention, or DLP for short. Think of these as your library's security guards, making sure a priceless manuscript doesn't get accidentally emailed to the wrong person or copied to some random USB drive.
And a DLP policy isn't just a simple on-off switch. No, it's way smarter than that. It can be a gentle guide, showing a pop-up that says, hey, are you sure you want to send this confidential document outside the company? Or it can be a firm guard and just outright block the email. It can even be a negotiator, allowing a user to override a block but forcing them to justify why, which creates this crucial audit trail. It's all about enforcing your rules intelligently and, more importantly, automatically.
And finally, that brings us to pillar 3, e-discovery. This is the whole process of finding that one specific sentence in that one specific book on that one specific shelf when a legal request or an internal investigation lands on your desk. This is the high-stakes search that can literally make or break a case.
So, we have these 3 core ideas, right? Classification, protection, and discovery. That's the why. So now, let's look at the how. The actual tools inside the Purview toolkit that bring all these principles to life.
And this is where it all comes together beautifully. As you can see, there's a specific Purview tool for each one of the pillars we just talked about. But here's the key insight. They aren't separate products working in silos. They're designed to work together. The classification labels you apply with information protection, those are the exact same labels that your data loss prevention policies use to block a file. It's a totally integrated system, all overseen by the compliance manager, which gives you that 30,000-foot view of your entire data world. All right, theory is great, but what does this actually look like when the pressure is on? Let's zoom in on e-discovery and see how this all plays out in a high-stakes, real-world scenario. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the Electronic Discovery Reference Model, or EDRM. You can think of it as the industry standard playbook for any e-discovery process. And the goal is actually pretty simple. Start with massive, messy volume of data on the left, and, through a clear, defensible process, end up with only the most relevant, critical information on the right. This whole workflow is basically a giant funnel. You start by identifying the key people who might have relevant data. Then,
And this is a really critical step, you place their information on what's called a legal hold, which freezes the data, making sure nothing can be accidentally or, intentionally deleted. Only then do you start to collect, process, and review it all to find that needle in the digital haystack before you hand it over. And this, right here, illustrates the end goal perfectly. In a typical case, Microsoft's own legal team starts by preserving a mind-boggling 5.5 terabytes of data that's spread across dozens of people and sources. I mean, that is an impossibly large amount of information to try and review manually. But here's the magic. By using the smart tools inside Purview to analyze that data before it ever leaves their system, they managed to get a 98% reduction in volume. Just think about that for a second. They take a mountain of data and shrink it down to a totally manageable hill, just 40 gigabytes, before it gets to the most expensive part of the whole process, review by external attorneys. We are talking massive, massive savings in both time and money. Okay, that all sounds pretty amazing, right? But it's not always a simple plug-and-play solution. There are some very real-world complexities and costs that every organization really needs to think about. A huge factor here is licensing. Now, the core e-discovery features, they're available in the Microsoft 365 E3 license. But those advanced analytics and machine learning tools, the stuff that enables that incredible 98% data reduction we just talked about, well, those are mostly part of the E5 license, which, as you can see, comes at a significant cost increase per user. And what happens when the data you desperately need isn't sitting in a nice, simple email or a Word document? What happens when it's buried deep inside a fast-moving, complex application? Yeah, Microsoft Teams is the perfect example of this challenge. To you and me, it's just one app. But behind the scenes, it's a data spiderweb. As you can see, your chats are stored in one place, your channel files are in another, and the files from your private one-on-one chats are somewhere else entirely. If you don't have a tool that understands this web, you have no chance of piecing together a complete conversation. I mean, if you just try to export this data without a proper e-discovery tool, you don't get a clean conversation. What you get is a disorganized mess of individual messages. You completely lose the critical context of the back and forth, which, trust me, makes the review process an absolute nightmare. And all of this really brings us to a crucial takeaway. The tools available in platforms like Purview are incredibly powerful, but they are not a silver bullet. Their effectiveness depends entirely on having a well-documented policy and a real long-term strategy for how you're actually going to govern and manage all your data. Which brings us to our final thought. Microsoft Purview offers this sophisticated, deeply integrated solution to the whole modern data dilemma. But the ultimate question isn't really about the technology's capabilities. It's about your organization's preparation. The tools are ready for the chaos. The real question is your data governance plan